Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in this video, I'm going to share some great options for a free online video editor. So there are lots of options out there for free online video editors, but honestly, some of these editors are browser based and just don't have robust servers to handle video editing. And the last thing you want when you're editing your video footage that you've spent hours and hours storyboarding and filming is to have to use editing tools that just don't do the job, right? So I'm excited to share the best options for you to make your YouTube videos without spending any money at all on editing software. So if you are new to my channel, hello and welcome. I share video production and video marketing tutorials to help wellness business owners create a memorable brand with inspiring videos. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell to get notified when I release new videos every week. So the free video editors that I'm about to share with you are really great because they all work on both Mac and PC. So let's go ahead and jump into the reviews for my top 3 free video editors. So the first program we're going to go through is Premiere Rush. Now, one of the great things about Premiere Rush is that you can access both the desktop program as well as the mobile app. And it's really great that you can share your project files between your computer and an app and just literally start a project on a computer or vice versa, and then switch over to work on that program on a different application. So I have the program open. Let's just go ahead and walk through setting up your project file. So at the bottom here, I'm going to type in my project name. Now, when we're opening our project file, we want to import some initial media just to get the project started. So I'm going to import a few clips here just by selecting them. And I'm going to hit create. So now it is creating my project file, preparing the media. Okay, so as you can see, we are now within Premiere Rush and we can see our timeline, the vertical line of clips right here at the bottom. And then in this big window here, we can see a preview of our project. So I want to walk through some basic steps that you can use in editing your project in Premiere Rush. The first thing is this is a magnetic timeline. So what that means is if I click on any clip and drag it, it's going to automatically magnetize to any clip that's in front of it. And I go here on the left-hand side, you can see we have a lot of different options. So what's nice is this is a very simplified version of Premiere Pro. You actually don't have a lot of fancy options. So it's very simple and basic editing. But one of the things you might want to use is the split clip option. So you can see I now have 2 clips. This is the same clip that I imported, it just split it in half. So I can now work with the clip, 2 different parts of this clip, and I can drag, for example, this new clip and put it anywhere in the timeline. And I can also shorten the clip, I can lengthen the clip, and it's only going to, of course, make it as long as the actual media is. So if you did want to, for instance, make this sunrise clip a little bit longer than the actual media file, then what you would do is you would highlight it and you would hit duplicate clip. So now we have a much longer section of this particular clip. Many different reasons you might want to do that. For instance, you might just want this at the beginning and the end of your project. Now, as you can see here, I am dragging the playhead. So when I drag this playhead, I can actually put it at any part of the project that I want to preview. So I have it right here on this yoga clip, and then I hit play on our monitor. This is called the program monitor, it's actually just a preview of your project file. So this is really great. We can preview. Now let's move down on our left-hand side. We could delete any clip out of the timeline, just highlighting and hitting delete. We can also expand audio. So as you see, when I hit expand audio, then I can see the audio that's attached to a specific video clip. Then I can also hit this control tracks, and that's going to allow me to see all of the tracks that I have in my project. Right now, we don't have many tracks, and so what I want to do is I want to show you how to add some music to this project. One of the great things about Premiere Rush is that it has stock music that you can access. You can have access to Adobe's stock audio library, not only music, soundtracks, but you can also access sound effects and you can access loops. So really great that I don't have to go out and search on the web. Of course, you have access to the YouTube audio library, many different other places you can find different audio tracks, music tracks, but it's just so great to be able to click a button and to be able to preview some tracks. So I'm going to go ahead and add this music track. And you see how it added it right after the playhead. So let me exit out of the audio and then we can play around. Where do we want this music track to come in on the timeline? So again, using the control tracks just makes it a lot easier to see what individual tracks of media that you have on your timeline. All of these little buttons here are for what we call the panels. So you have different panels for your graphics, your color, your audio. So let's walk through them really quickly. So we have our graphic panel. All I do is click on that little button, that T button. It might take a second to load. And you can see we can add a graphic. And again, we have access to the Adobe library, stock titles, all of these templates that are just within the Adobe library. We have transition graphics, titles. So what I want to do is I'm going to add a title by clicking in the timeline and selecting a clip, putting my playhead where I want that title to go. Let's just say I want to add this title. So I click add and it's going to load that motion graphics. Let's close out so you can see what's happening here. Now we have a graphics track. Right above the video clip, we have access to our graphic. If I double click on this graphic, it opens the panel. And so I can go through here, I can change the font, I can change, if it happens to close, you just click on it again, first name, last name, font style, we can change the font size, maybe we want that a little bigger, and the text color. So I know I do want to change the text color, I want to make it black. So that's going to be a little bit easier to read. And then to change the actual text, all I'm going to do is double click on that text and delete. And now I can type my own text in there. Okay, so that is a preview, very quick preview of the graphics. There's lots you can do with graphics in Adobe Premiere Rush. We also may want to add effects. So let's say I want to add a dissolve. There's lots of transitions here. You probably only want to look at some basic ones like the dissolve, fade to black, fade to white, etc. But let's go ahead and add a dissolve. You can see I highlighted my clip in the timeline and then I just hit the dissolve button. So now let's go ahead and preview that transition. Beautiful. So now, as you can see, when I zoom in, just by clicking this button at this bar at the bottom there, I can zoom in and right where my playhead is, I can see that transition is right there. So you can change it to any transition that you want. And then you could also pan and zoom on a clip just by highlighting the clip, panning and zooming, auto reframe, lots of different effect options that you have. We could also change our color by having these built-in presets. We can easily change the color of a clip. So if I want to go cinematic, if I want to go cool, if I want, there's just so many different options. Most of them you probably won't use. It's more for like a music video style project, but you can certainly scroll through here if you want to do some quick changes with your color. But what I would recommend is using the manual options. So let's go back out of the preset, and then the manual options, you can really work with the color. And this is especially good, you know, if you shot something that's a little bit overexposed, or you want to change the contrast, change the color temperature a little bit. It's just good to do some basic tweaks. Then we also can change the speed of our video clip. You can see here the range, make it 100, or you can make it slower at like 50%. And then here's our audio panel, which we looked at, where we can go ahead and change the clip volume. So we might want the music a little bit louder. We can mute a clip. We can change the type of a clip in case Adobe hasn't recognized it, because it's going to essentially give you like a template for the audio. It knows how your music is going to play within the project and how a voice file might play. The last thing we have here is transform. Okay, and transform is if you want to make some manual alterations to a clip. So let's say I want this clip to rotate, for example. All I do is I simply drag this rotation bar and see how I want that clip to rotate. Maybe we want to change it horizontally, we want to change it vertically, etc. So you do have some nice options for cropping the top, the bottom. When you crop, you might want your edge feathering, which just gives it like a nice soft look around the edges. Okay, so the last thing that I want to show you on Premiere Rush, you do have very simple settings for sharing your videos. You have these presets. Now, I would recommend playing around with these presets. You do have some advanced settings, but it does give you some options for sharing to different social media websites. So that is pretty much it for Premiere Rush. So let's go ahead and move into the next editing platform. Okay, so here we are on Filmora. I already have downloaded the program and I have it open. So let's go ahead and walk through setting up a project on Filmora. So the first thing I want to select is my aspect ratio. And you can see they have all the standard aspect ratios here. I'm going to hit widescreen. Okay, so now we're going to import our footage. Okay, so we've got our footage imported. As you can see, it's right here under Project Media. So as you can see here on the left-hand side, you've got Project Media, and then you can import anything you want. You can also open your settings so that it can access all the photos on your computer. And they do give you some sample media. So if you just want to practice editing in Filmora, you have access to some of their sample videos, sample colors, etc. And then you have a shared media folder. So I'm going to double click on any of these clips and I can preview them in the window here. So what we want to do is we want to do our 3-point editing. So if you aren't familiar yet with 3-point editing, it's simply selecting an in and an out point of a clip and then bringing that clip to the timeline and selecting a new in point of the next clip that you want in your timeline and piecing those together. So if we preview this clip here, and let's just say we want a few seconds of this clip, all we need to do is hit the I button as the shortcut. I is going to make our in point, and then let's just say we want a few seconds, and then we hit O as our shortcut, and now we have our out point. So what happens is when we select the plus button here, it's bringing in the portion of the media that we want, not the entire clip. It's bringing in just from the in point to the out point. So that is what you want to get used to when you're doing any kind of project, especially a bigger project, you know, something longer than 1 minute, because you don't want to bring all your media, in other words, down to the timeline, and then you have like an hour of footage that you need to splice up. You want to take it in sections. This is exactly how you can have a more systematic approach. So again, the 3-point editing is the way to do it with your in and your out points. That might already be familiar to you, but the purpose of this video, just as a caveat, this is all for beginners. So I'm just giving you an overview of these editing programs. And then if you actually want more intermediate to advanced level skills, I would be happy to provide a tutorial for you on any of that. Just leave a comment down below. But hopefully just getting this overview will give you an idea of which of these editing programs will work best for you. So let's go ahead and walk through some of the features here. So first of all, you want to, just get familiar with using your playhead on the timeline. So all I'm doing is I'm dragging the playhead backwards and forwards. And then if I leave the playhead at any spot, I can simply hit the space bar. The space bar is your shortcut for playing the footage on your timeline. So let's do that again. Hit the playhead and then the space bar, and it will play everything forward. So I'm going to go ahead and add these clips, the full clips, to the timeline just for the purposes of this demo. Now, the other feature you can get used to on the timeline is zooming in and out. So what I'm doing now is I'm zooming out and we're zooming in. You can zoom in really, really, really far on the timeline to see your clips all together, or you can zoom out and be able to expand the timeline. Now, you also have access to that right here where the plus and the minus sign is, but you may want to get used to just doing that quickly. And the way that I'm doing it is I'm bringing my mouse right where the time code is. And all I'm doing is dragging to the right to zoom out and dragging to the left to zoom in. All right, so the next thing I want to show you is all of these panels here at the top. So we have stock media. We can access easily some GIFs and stickers, which is really nice. We don't have to pull them in from elsewhere and then import them in. There, you can easily access a whole bunch, even Pixabay you have access to, and of course you can search for what you need. Then we have access to an audio library with various music. So let me show you how to import a music track into your project. Let's say we want to add some music. So I've already previewed some of these tracks, and I know that I want this folk track, Coconut Tree. So I'm going to double click on it. So just double clicking, we're able to preview the track. Now I'm going to drag it down into my timeline, and let's zoom in. Now we can see that the music covers the whole video, but let's say that we don't want it on the entire video. Now what you can do, let's say we just want it on this first clip here. What we want to do is over here, there are some buttons. This button right here, you can lock and unlock a track. Okay, so let me demonstrate this. If I have the track locked, and for purposes of the demo, I'm just putting the playhead in the middle of this clip, then I hit the scissors on the space bar on this playhead, then you'll see when I unlock the track, the music track has been split into two parts, but the video has stayed intact. So now what we can do is we can highlight the portion of the music track that we want to delete and simply hit delete. And so now we have a shorter amount of the music that we can use. And you can apply this, of course, if you want to edit some of the video, but you don't want to edit the audio. So it works however you would like to use it, but the lock track can be very useful for keeping an entire sequence in place. So if you've worked, to get video in with a certain amount of timing and the clips all in the order that you want it, you might want to lock that track so that it doesn't move out of sync. Okay, so now we have our music track. If I double click on it, then I can see the options for that particular track. And I have a very simple audio mixer, which you can play around with, to work with the levels within the music. I can fade in the music. I can fade out slower or faster. Of course, the higher numbers are a faster fade. I can lower the volume of other clips that we have in this project, which is very useful. And then if this was a track where it was narration instead of music and we want to remove background noise, this little button can be useful. Okay, so that explains the audio. Now let me go ahead and show you the titles. So you do have a bunch of titles. Now, these are available in the Filmora library, but you do have to pay for some of these titles, in other words. So they aren't very expensive, but just keep in mind, if you do see this little diamond icon, then you will have to pay for those titles once you export your project. But of course, if you upgrade to Filmora Pro, then a lot of these stock titles, stock audio, etc., they're already going to be available to you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and preview this title just by double clicking. I can see it right here. And now I'm going to bring it. What I want to do is I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to move everything. All I did with my mouse is I highlighted every clip on the timeline, and then once I get this hand icon, I just can move the entire project on the timeline backwards and forwards, and I am moving it forwards so that I can insert this title. And so now I just bring it back so it's back to back with the title, and I'm going to try out this title. I'm going to put my playhead right over the title, and I'm going to double click on it. Now, once I double click on it, I have a lot of options here. As you can see in this box, I can go ahead and change the text. So let's say I want it to say free yoga class. And then we have a lot of other options for changing the scale, changing the position. You can rotate the text. There's lots of different options you can play around with. Of course, the color, if we wanted this a little brighter, then we can also change the text style, which is pretty cool. And then we can actually change the animation. So we can also animate this text and preview it. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you on Filmora is how to use the split screen. So it's really great that Filmora has this right at the top as one of the panels. So normally you're going to have to do keyframing in an editing program to be able to get split screen effects. But there's lots of templates here to choose from, and you can have both photos as well as videos, so you can combine different types of media. So let me show you how to go through this quickly. So we're gonna click on any of the templates just to see what the layout is, and it will preview it here. And then we're gonna drag this down to the timeline. And then once we have it dragged to the timeline, we want to hit the advanced window. And that's going to allow us to really get precise on what we want our split screen to look like. So let me go ahead and add our images. So we double click and drag over each of the images that we want in the split screen. So let's preview this really quickly. This is just the raw split screen that we've chosen so far. So you see when you preview it that initially your videos or your images aren't necessarily going to fit in each of the split screen slots. So we have 2 slots here, so to speak. And what I want to do is I want to highlight the image, and then I'm going to actually play with the scale. So using the slider, I can play with the scale, and then I can actually use my mouse just to drag the image. So I want this phone in the middle of the screen there, but I also want it to completely fill. We don't want any black bars at the top or bottom. So I'm going to just keep playing around with it until I get a good fit. So that looks pretty good. Yeah, so that one looks good. And then for this one, let's go ahead and play it again. So you see how there's all this space here, and we can actually bring this yoga clip in a little bit further. Bring her in a little bit to the right so her hand doesn't get cut off. And we also don't want to have any black bars, but let's go ahead and play it now. Okay, so her head's getting cut off a little bit, so we can actually just work with the scale here and make sure it's a little, the mat I'm bringing towards the bottom, but I want to scale it up so that we don't have any black bars at the top. Let's play it again. Great. Okay, so now we have our images centered on the screen. Now what we can do is go into each of these windows and we can refine it even further. So we can rotate images, we can stabilize images if you have some shaky footage. You can even essentially access all of the different effects that you can for any video footage just by coming right here directly within the split screen window. And then the other cool thing I want to show you is adding animations. So as you see, this has no animation so far. And you can choose what you want to apply to each of the different types of media within the split screen slots, right? So what I mean is I can apply this zoom out to each of these images, or I could apply a different one. Each of the images or footage can have different animations, but I think it's better to have the same, at least in this case. So all I'm doing is I'm highlighting the image, and then I'm going to apply the animation. So let's see. We gotta get it on the first image here. Double click and double click on the animation. There we go. So it's exactly the same. So then we just hit OK, And now this is applied on our timeline. So we can go ahead and preview it on the timeline. Awesome. So that is it for Filmora, and now let's move into the third video editing software. Okay, so now we're gonna walk through Davinci Resolve. So as we walk through this, I wanna give that caveat again about this video. This is a beginner tutorial. If you guys would like me to do an intermediate or advanced tutorial, I'd be happy to do that. Just leave a comment below. So I'm gonna just give you an overview of the different features in Davinci Resolve, especially if you're a beginner or you have a little bit of experience with editing. You may want to move over to Davinci Resolve to kind of upgrade your skills, because there's a lot more available to you, very similar to Final Cut Pro and Adobe Premiere Pro. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is import our media. So we're going to go here, import media. Okay, so now we have our media imported. To work with the media and to preview it, all you need to do is double click on one of your thumbnails. So now we have the preview window here, and then on the bottom we have our timeline. Okay, so now we're gonna look at the tracks here on our timeline. So your tracks are gonna be useful when you're adding titles, when you're adding music or different audio files. You can separate out your tracks for specific type of media. And let's look at the buttons here. We have our mute and unmute for audio, of course. Then we can also disable a track. If maybe we're thinking of deleting something, but we don't want to delete it yet, we can disable it. We can also lock our track if we are done with placing our titles, for instance, or putting together a sequence. We don't want things to move in the timeline. We're gonna lock it. And then really cool here, we have our tracks are numbered. So if we highlight a track and it is in red, then when we insert our media, which I'm going to show you in a moment, when you start cutting, then the media is going to the track that is highlighted in red. Now we also have some nice buttons here that we can access so we don't have to remember hotkeys. We have our snapping button to make our gaps disappear in the timeline. And then we have this one here, which is expanding and closing up our tracks, adding more tracks. Okay, so let's go ahead and work with our media. Again, as I explained, if you watched the previous Filmora tutorial, I explained the hotkeys, shortcuts that you can use for marking your in and your out points on your tracks. Okay, so we're gonna double click on the media, on the footage to preview it. And then we're gonna use our shortcuts on our keyboard, I for in point and O for out point. So just for the demo, I'm just gonna quickly choose an in point. So, we don't want our in point on our zoom necessarily. Let's choose it right here. And then the out point will be right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and drag this clip to the timeline. And then to scroll through the timeline, I'm just dragging my mouse to the left while I have it right here where the numbers are on the timeline, dragging to the left and then dragging to the right. And of course I can hit spacebar, placing my playhead anywhere on the clip and previewing it. And it looks like we have a clip here. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. Okay, so now I wanna show you the different types of edits that you can do. So I'm gonna choose a selection from this yoga footage with my in and my out point. Okay, and now here, right underneath the media window, I have various types of edits that I can do. I'm just gonna show you a few of them for this demo, some of the most common ones that you will be using. So the first one is append. When I hit append and I've highlighted a clip in the media bin, then this is going to be added to the end of my timeline. It doesn't matter where you have your playhead, it's added to the end. Okay, so the next one I want to show you is the place on top. So if you don't want to mess up a sequence that you've already put together, but you want some footage, maybe you just want to see if it's going to work. When you place the footage on top, it is putting everything to the left of the playhead, as you can see, and it hasn't deleted any of our clips, and it's put the exact length that I specified in my in and my out points. So of course, any track that is on the top is going to preview. That is going to be what is actually seen in your project, in case you weren't familiar with how tracks work. So I can disable the track now, and that way I can see, do I want to keep the sequence as is, or maybe I want to add that clip. It's just a little bit easier to preview it rather than picturing it in your mind, right? So let's go ahead and erase that, and let's try another one. So now let's look at the source overwrite. So I've highlighted the clip again. I hit the source overwrite, and you see it added the new track, but when it added the footage to the left of the playhead, it did it at exactly the point that I specified. So we didn't get the full amount of the footage. It's simply adding the amount that I specified for it to overwrite on the timeline. It takes a little bit of playing around with these types of edits. You just got to dig into your projects and, just get into a project that you're really interested in practicing with. And once you get familiar with these types of edits, you're going to be moving a lot faster. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the titles. So there's loads to choose from, which is really awesome. So I want to choose this slide down. I'm just hovering my mouse to see what it looks like in the preview window. And then I drag it down, and I always want it on the top track. You want to have it above because that, again, is the track that's going to be seen in your project. So to preview it, I'm hitting the playhead. And it is playing back a little slow here because we're doing the screen recording. But then we want to double click, and so then to change the wording, we need to go into the inspector here on the upper left-hand side. And you can see that we have the slide in, slide down title that has been added, and we can go to this window here, and I can add yoga for beginners. And of course, we can change all the fonts and change the size, etc. All right, so then down at the bottom here, I just want to scroll through these windows. Most of them you won't be using. You will be staying on the edit window. Depends on how you want to preview your Davinci Resolve layout. You can stay on the cut window, which is the one that I prefer. You can also look at the color. So Davinci Resolve is really known for its color correction. Many big name film production studios actually use Davinci Resolve for both audio production and for color correction. So this is very robust. I'm not walking through it in this video, but you do have this here if you want to start to work on color correcting some of your footage. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you is just working with the inspector. So any piece of footage that you have highlighted, whether it is in your media pool or on your timeline, if you highlight that clip, you can see all of the different settings and features for that particular clip. So we can access our audio settings. If we have effects, transitions, we can access that all right from the inspector. So you're going to be working with the inspector a lot, and you want to just get familiar with turning off and on some of these features. Okay, and then the other thing that I want to show you is dynamic zoom. Now, I'm not demonstrating it because I haven't imported footage here that is drone footage or really wide shots, but I just want to give the information about this dynamic zoom. It is a great feature of Davinci Resolve where you can automatically create a zoom on your footage and not have to create keyframes. So keyframes are literally, you know, frame by frame making that zoom happen. You don't have to do that. You can just use the dynamic zoom and see if it works for you. But in a lot of cases, that can be really helpful. Okay, and then the last part of the inspector is, of course, you can turn on and off your effects from right here in the inspector. You don't even have to delete them from your timeline. If you want, you can just come in here and deselect whatever you want. So if you have added, see, I've added multiple effects to this one clip. You can just simply turn them on and off and see which one actually works in your project. So that is it for Davinci Resolve. I hope all of these tips were helpful to you. Thanks so much for watching this tutorial, everyone. Please let me know in the comments below which free editing software are you going to use. Be sure to like this video because it greatly helps out the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in more video production and video marketing tips every single week. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Have a wonderful day.